Hi there, you're listening to the Premier League podcast, episode 4. Today we're talking Bundesliga Matchday 2, so let's get started. I am Abel Mesaros, and we are talking Bundesliga Matchday 2. If this is your first time listening to the Premier League podcast, thank you for coming. We try to produce a podcast every week for your enjoyment. You can also follow us on Twitter at BundesPL. You can visit the website, bundespremierleague.com. You can also find us on Spreaker at BundesPL, or you can also find us on Facebook at bundespremierleague.com. So let's get into the show. Today I'll actually review Matchday 2 in a bit of a new format by asking 10 questions or so, starting with number 1, which is, will Don Carlo Ancelotti be the only thing holding Bayern under 3 goals? So obviously there's a hint of sarcasm in that question, and I'll talk a little bit about Carlo Ancelotti, how he's sort of the closest thing to Dean Smith holding Michael Jordan under 20 points, as the NBA joke used to go. But basically, Bayern against Schalke were pretty average, and Schalke did a great job of restricting them. But I think a lot of that came down to the squad selection. When Ancelotti finally realized that he had Arturo Vidal back from Chile, even if he was a little bit tired, Joshua Kimmich, who arguably should have started over Renato Sanchez, and then Douglas Costa, who was introduced as well. At the Renato Sanchez start, which I understand because Sanchez had said no to Portugal in the World Cup qualifiers. Instead, he opted to train with Bayern, and he's the 35 million euro new man, and I think Ancelotti wanted to probably reward him by giving him a start. But unfortunately, Sanchez finished with 1 tackle, 1 dribble, and committed 3 fouls and lost the ball several times. And he's a player who struggles against teams that sit deep, and he's only 18, so I don't think we should be expecting sort of immediate brilliance from him. He's very dynamic on the counters, but unfortunately that might not be. Definitely wasn't the Guardiola style, and maybe Ancelotti will counter a little bit more with him being Italian, and sort of the last couple games have shown Bayern to be less possession oriented. Excuse me. But I don't know. The other thing that was interesting about Sanchez is that had this domino effect on Thiago, who looked sort of miserable when he was out there with Sanchez, and then came alive and ended up with 121 touches, 5 interceptions, and 3 dribbles, and had a really, really nice game 2 ways. Both ways he defended really well and was really good with long balls. He played 11 of 13. And I think he was probably maybe Bayern's best player on the night. And then the other one that was sort of interesting was David Alaba, who I think benefited from Schalke a little bit. And the way that happened is that Schalke, who should get a lot of credit for pressing Bayern and making life a little bit miserable for them, had Yevgen Konoplyanka, the new signing from Sevilla, kind of limit Alaba roaming forward, just because Konoplyanka is such a fast player, and I think Alaba was worried about him getting snuck in behind him. And when he was subbed off, Alaba activated his license to roam forward, and he ended up finishing with 4 key passes, including that one brilliant cross that Lewandowski somehow bungled. So he was really important for Bayern, but the passing maps were kind of interesting. It focused mostly on Thiago and Alaba, and didn't get a ton of involvement from Frank Ribéry. Only got passes from Alaba, and then they struggled at times to get Lewandowski in, and there was a little too much side-to-side passing from Thiago and Philipp Lahm. And I think Xabi Alonso wasn't really doing a whole lot in terms of getting the ball forward. Not one of his better games. But let's move on and talk about the second question, which is concerning Schalke, which is, so which Schalke are we going to see this year? The sort of new kids on the block, aka the new signings, or the sort of youth players that we've become accustomed to. And well, based on the first game, you would tend to go for the youth and based on Schalke's history. But recently in the Bayern game, you saw five of the new signings all get a start, and Weinzierl fielded this interesting team with Benny Hövedes at right back, and then Naldo and Nastasic in the middle, and Baba Rahman at left back, and then they had a new double pivot with Stambouli and Nabil Bentaleb, who I think both had pretty strong games in trying to disrupt Bayern, and they put Leon Goretzka, who usually plays as sort of central midfielder, as sort of like the number 10 roaming forward, and then Konoplyanka was deployed on the right. But there is this dilemma for Schalke, who've been so noted for their development of players that on the other hand, they always seem to lack the sort of players that are in the prime of their careers, sort of the 24 to 28 age range, and the other sort of and so there is sort of this new maybe it's the Christian Heidel impact already that they are getting those players, which is number one. It's important that Schalke are signing those players like Koke and others as well, and looking to field a more mature side. But I think they're still their biggest problem is attacking. Obviously Max Meyer wasn't very fit, having just come back from the Olympics, and still needs to kind of settle into the side. And Goretzka, who had a really good game, but is not the most creative player. And the build up to Konoplyanka from Hövedes was non-existent. And Choupo-Moting is a guy who takes players on, but doesn't always create for others. And so there was a kind of an interesting thing with Schalke's build-up as well, is that the CDMs, Bentaleb and Stambouli, didn't get a lot of balls from the back line. And, Schalke didn't have a whole lot of possession as well. And I think the number one biggest problem is what's going to happen with Klaas-Jan Huntelaar, who was anonymous completely in this game. He ended up with 15 touches in 66 minutes and had this sort of horrendous attacking dashboard. If you go and take a look at on StatsZone, I'll put this in the show notes. But he basically did nothing. And then Bilembolo, who came on, had 12 touches in 36 minutes and looked a lot more lively. But the problem with Bilembolo is that he's still very raw and is not really great in sort of passing. So I'm not really sure if Schalke have an immediate answer. I mean, I would have actually have liked to seen them bring in sort of a Bundesliga striker who has some experience. Like I think somebody like Andre Kramaric would have been wonderful. I'm not sure how realistic that was, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. So that's my Schalke question. I don't know which way they will go. I think a lot of people are excited about Schalke, and to me, that's sort of true in the way that they gave Bayern a nice run for their money. But at the end of the day, they're still down. They've still got 0 points. So we'll see which way they're going to go with. So my third question is: are Borussia Mönchengladbach aware of this thing called forward passing? Well, apparently Freiburg are. So let me explain. The game that they played at Freiburg was one of the weirdest games statistically that I've ever seen, where Freiburg managed to get 18 shots on just 35% possession, as Borussia Mönchengladbach passed themselves into trouble time and time again. The expected goals were 1.6 for Freiburg, including the penalty, and 0.1 for Gladbach, who had the 5 shots, and 4 of them came way outside the box, including a really nice goal by Torgan Hazard. But other than that, they were completely ineffective. And the passing networks that you can find by 11 Tegen 11 or Elf Tegen Elf on Twitter show this really weird build-up where the back three, Tony Janschke, Andreas Christensen, and Nico Elvedi, all had over 100 passes, but all of them are sideways and or forward to Christoph Kramer or Tobias Strobel, who neither of them had any passes forward. Like it's completely ridiculous if you go look at the passing max and the dashboard. It's almost you would think that like Andre Schubert specifically told them not to play any balls forward, and So needless to say, Raphael and Lars Stindl couldn't get involved. That's one of the best combinations of deep completions in the Bundesliga, as a note by Dustin Ward of StatsBomb. And they were completely taken out of that. And part of that is, Freiburg's press was effective, but part of that was just Kramer and Strobel are just completely unable to do that. And you have to wonder where Mo Dahoud is going to fit in. And, Schubert has deflected that and said, he's still young, but this was a guy who was one of the better midfielders in the Bundesliga last year. And somehow he can't get on the field when they really struggle in the build-up. Freiburg, on the other hand, had this completely different passing map where they just, it's almost like they played without a middle. They have this sort of shape where it's just avoiding the middle and playing through the fullbacks and really direct up top, especially on the left towards Vincenzo Grifo and onto Max Philipp, who had 2 goals and 2 shots from outside the box, as he is still yet to take a shot from outside the box this season. But you got to give him a lot of credit. They did take a ton of long shots. I counted at least I think 15 of their shots were outside the box, but apparently it worked out for them. So good for Freiburg. But I think the bigger issue is for Gladbach. And I don't know, I think they've been a really bad away team now this is the second season. And it's something that they need to fix as they try to contend for the Champions League. I don't expect them to have much success against Manchester City, but we'll see today. So moving on to the fourth question is are Eintracht Frankfurt actually a competent Bundesliga team? And well, the short answer is yes, just because they did really, really well against Schalke and should have won that game comfortably. And then on Matchday 2, they dominated the Hessen derby against Darmstadt, ending up with an expected goals sum of close to 2, 1.3, and one point of the other models had them at 1.7. And the build-up was really excellent. They had their Jesus Vallejo and David Abraham both with over 100 passes, but they were actually getting them forward, and Hasebe and Omar Mascarell were getting them out to the fullbacks who then, matriculated the ball to Sabochusti and Mijat Kacinovic. And they were able to get it into Branimir Hrgota, who missed a huge chance in the first half. And I think for the first 50 or 60 minutes or so, Eintracht were really dominant against Darmstadt. Even though they didn't get Alex Meyer terribly involved, and they had 14 shots, and there were 3 really good chances from around the 6. And it's nice to see from Niko Kovac, who is probably not one of the more creative coaches, but and then sort of later on, as my friend and colleague Anas Diborusin mentioned, that there's no creativity after Eintracht, and they had no shots on goal after the 50th minute or so, and they struggled to create chances, and Darmstadt kind of grew into the game, even though they have one of the uglier passing maps I've ever seen, with basically the biggest pass is the goalkeeper Michael Esser to Sven Schiplock, who won 10 headers on the day, but sometimes there's totally disconnected moves, and it's Darmstadt. But the fact that they were able to get a result is amazing and commendable, but they're still gonna struggle in my opinion. But I would look out for Eintracht, who looked very, very competent on this day, and it's the second game in a row. Moving on to the next game, and the next question, which is number 5 on the list. Can somebody tell Bruno Labbadia that Filip Kostic, Nico Müller, and Müller and Halilovic are 3 of his best players, and they're actually allowed to be on the pitch on the same time, and they actually should receive the ball from their teammates? So the reason why I'm saying that is that apparently this is the second game now where either Kostic or Nico Müller were completely taken out of the game. The first game for Hamburg against Ingolstadt, Nico Müller finished with 7 completed passes, and this time it was Filip Kostic's turn to be anonymous and get completely taken out of the game by Benjamin Henrichs from Leverkusen, who did this to him last season at Stuttgart when Henrichs played for Leverkusen. But Filip Kostic ended up, I think,